grab your sword, strap on your armour, and let's ride into battle. Think castles were just grand stone homes. Think again. Defending a castle was brutal, and one of the sneakiest defences was murder holes. These were gaps in the ceiling where defenders could dump boiling oil, molten lead, or even rocks on invaders trying to storm the gates. If you ever wanted to take a swim in a medieval moat, don't. Most castle toilets, called garderobes, were simple stone seats with holes, leading directly into the moat. Yep, the same water that protected the castle from enemies was also filled with human waste. So if you were a soldier sieging a castle, not only were you dodging arrows, but you were also standing next to a giant medieval toilet. Becoming a knight wasn't just about wearing cool armour and swinging swords. It took a lifetime of training. Boys as young as 7 years old became pages, working under knights and learning basic combat skills. By 14, they became squires, training harder, polishing armour, and assisting in real battles. If they survived all that, they were knighted around age 21. No participation trophies here. If you couldn't keep up, you were out. Ever heard the myth that knights in full armour couldn't move? That's completely false. A full suit of plate armour weighed 80 to 100 pounds, but it was so well designed that knights could run, climb, and even do somersaults in it. Some knights even wrestled and fought on foot in full armour, proving that they weren't just walking tin cans. Jousting wasn't just a sport, it was a death match on horseback. 2 knights charged at full speed, aiming their lances to shatter on impact. Even though they used blunt lances, knights often died from broken necks, concussions, or even splinters piercing their eyes. In one famous case, King Henry II of France was killed in a joust when a lance splintered through his eye socket. Talk about a painful way to go. The longbow was one of the deadliest weapons of the Middle Ages. Unlike short bows, these could pierce knight armour from over 200 yards away. At the Battle of Agincourt, 1415, English longbowmen decimated the French knights, proving that you didn't need heavy armour to win battles. You just needed a really, really big bow. Castles were built for defence, but if things got too dangerous, lords had hidden tunnels to escape a siege. These tunnels, called sally ports, led to secret exits beyond the castle walls, allowing defenders to sneak out, surprise the enemy, or even escape unnoticed. So if you ever feel trapped, just remember, medieval lords had a backup plan. Not all knights served kings, some joined mysterious warrior orders. The Knights Templar, Teutonic Knights, and Hospitallers were elite warriors sworn to protect pilgrims and fight in holy wars. Many of these knights became legendary, with some believing they guarded sacred relics like the Holy Grail. Their secrets remain shrouded in mystery, with some even inspiring legends of hidden treasure. Forget soccer or basketball. If you were a noble in medieval times, your favourite sport was hunting with falcons. Falconry was a status symbol, with trained birds hunting rabbits, pheasants, and even small deer. Only the wealthiest nobles could afford rare falcons from the Middle East, making them a prized possession in medieval courts. Think of it as having a luxury sports car, except it's a bird. Dogs and horses were common nightly pets, but some took it to the next level. They kept bears as pets. Knights returning from wars sometimes brought back exotic animals. Some even trained bears for hunting, or had them fight in tournaments for entertainment. Imagine riding into battle with a trained war bear. Now that's medieval madness. Most people in medieval times never travelled more than 10 miles from their birthplace. That's like spending your entire life in your hometown without ever leaving. Roads were dangerous, and most peasants were bound to the land, working for their lords from sunrise to sunset. Think your apartment needs a deep clean? Medieval homes had dirt floors, no glass windows, and were filled with the lovely aroma of smoke, sweat, and, well, livestock. Hygiene? That was a luxury few could afford. Toilets, forget about them. Most people simply had a hole in the ground or used chamber pots, which were dumped, sometimes out the window, onto the streets. Yep, medieval streets were not a place you'd want to take a casual stroll. Forget fancy silverware. Forks weren't commonly used in medieval Europe. People ate with their hands, knives, and sometimes spoons. If you dined with royalty, you might get a napkin. Otherwise, it was all about licking your fingers clean. Believe it or not, women were the primary brewers of beer. Since water was often unsafe to drink, beer was the go-to beverage for all ages. Brewing beer was a household task, just like cooking or baking bread. The medieval work week? 6 days a week, sunrise to sunset. Peasants worked long hours farming, tending livestock, and doing whatever their lord required. Sundays were a day of rest, and a much-needed break. Marriage in the Middle Ages happened early, sometimes as young as 12 for girls. Marriages were often arranged for economic or political reasons, not love. Romance novels had nothing on medieval reality. Think you can wear whatever you want, not in medieval times. Sumptuary laws dictated what colours and fabrics you could wear based on your social class. Peasants, earth tones, nobles, rich, vibrant hues. Medieval fairs were the highlight of the year. Think of them as a mix of a sports event, a music festival, and a wild party. Jousting, drinking, bear baiting, and live entertainment kept the crowds entertained. While peasants lived on bread and porridge, nobles feasted on extravagant dishes, swan, peacock, and even whale. Presentation was everything. Sometimes chefs would reassemble cooked birds with their feathers just for show. Medicine in the Middle Ages was questionable at best. If you were sick, your chances of survival depended more on luck than actual science. Let's take a look at some of the wildest medical practices and superstitions of medieval times. Feeling sick? Just drain some blood. Bloodletting was one of the most common treatments for everything. Fevers, headaches, infections, you name it. The idea was that illnesses were caused by an imbalance of bodily fluids, so removing blood would rebalance the body. Problem was, it often made people weaker, or even killed them. Believe it or not, medieval doctors tasted urine to diagnose illnesses. They believed the colour, smell, and taste revealed a patient's condition. Imagine walking into a doctor's office today and being handed a cup of pee for a taste test. Yeah, hard pass. The Black Death was the deadliest pandemic in history, wiping out nearly 50% of Europe's population in just a few years. But what caused it? Some believed it was bad air, others blamed angry gods or even witchcraft. People carried flowers or burned herbs to purify the air, none of which helped, of course. These guys, they weren't just creepy, they believed their beaked masks, stuffed with herbs, would protect them from the deadly disease. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Ever had a headache so bad you'd drill a hole in your head? Well, medieval doctors did just that. This practice, called trepanning, was meant to release evil spirits causing mental illness, seizures, or migraines, and somehow, people survived this. Before modern medicine, many treatments were a mix of herbs, magic spells, and crushed gemstones. Yup, some believed powdered gems could cure disease, while others relied on charms and prayers to heal. Let's just say medical school wasn't really a thing back then. Forget modern hospitals. Medieval ones were more like shelters run by monks. They provided food and a place to rest. But actual medical care? Not so much. If you got better, great. If not, well, prayers were your best hope. Believe it or not, people thought that kings had healing powers. It was called the king's touch, and rulers were believed to cure diseases like scrofula just by laying their hands on the sick. Did it work? Probably not. But hey, it gave people hope. Of all the bizarre treatments, leeches are still used today. In medieval times, they were placed on wounds to suck out bad blood and prevent infection. Turns out modern doctors actually use leeches in surgery to improve circulation, one of the few medieval treatments that wasn't complete nonsense. Giving birth in medieval times was dangerous, so midwives relied on prayers, amulets, and herbal remedies to protect mothers and babies. Superstition and medicine often went hand in hand because back then, any bit of luck was needed to survive.